Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, I'm talking with Brandi Molitor about why we're obsessed with the next rung of achievement. Brandi is a white queer woman who's committed to living a life of truth. She works with high-achieving folks who want to align with their core desires and alleviate their frustration and confusion, bringing them closer to peace and clarity. Welcome to the show, Brandi.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to be here too. I have loved every conversation we've had before today. And so I'm especially excited to dive into this topic around why we're so obsessed with the next, and achieving. So yeah, where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great topic, especially for the folks that you and I work with. We tend to attract high achieving people who really have a zest for life and a lot of passion. And it can very easily get misguided, or we can end up on a certain path that becomes more about the next hit of achievement versus really igniting that fire of passion from within. And when we live in this world of people who are really committed to living a great life, we can sometimes pass the tipping point, even in the self-help world, right? Where it becomes
especially in the self-help world, I'd say.
Yeah, where it can even become the next rung of achievement in self-help, right? Where we become almost addicted to that and sort of this quest for like enlightenment and really tapping into that purpose. And when am I going to feel that purpose fire that we've all been kind of trained around this idea of? And I've just noticed that in my 20 years of being in the coaching world, that I've noticed more and more and more the folks that was working with, they really were trying to get to the next thing. And that became their obsession. And they were some of the most quote unquote successful people, right, that I would probably cross paths with, but had this feeling of unfulfillment all the time. Nothing was ever enough. And I found it in myself too, right? When, especially early in my career, I was living in New York City, which is a great place to be, and a place that can either, it can take you to the next level or sort of swallow you up at times too, right? Because it's all right there. I mean, it's like kid in a candy shop, basically, for people that are looking to explore life and develop themselves and all these things. And I was climbing that ladder and I was trying to get to the next thing, and everything was so seductive and enticing. And I saw myself get completely lost in just trying to get to the next thing, that I hit this breaking point. I hit this wall of burnout that I never thought was possible at a youngish age. I mean, I was in my early 30s, mid 30s when it started to happen, where I just completely just destroyed my spirit, because I was also very competitive. I was really ambitious. I also had a family that rooted me in perfectionism and not enoughism, right? So just constantly trying to fill that void, know? And so when you have that coupled with a society that feeds that as well, it's a really tricky formula to become completely consumed with that. And so I started to notice these patterns over and over again, which it kind of sounds cliche, like, yeah, we all kind of know people can get addicted to achievement, but there's so much nuance in it that I think that's worth the conversation, because we can also trick ourselves into thinking that we're not obsessed with the next rung of achievement. We're just driven, we're just, passionate people,
I'd love for you to break down that distinction, because I think it's great to go into the nuances, because it can be confusing, this fine line between I'm driven, I'm passionate, I love what I do, tipping into an obsessiveness, or like an inability to just be where you are and accept and appreciate and be grateful for what's here now. And so can you talk about that that tip over, that nuance, because I think that's really key.
Yeah. What's coming to mind is the idea of attachment, right, to the outcome, which, and that's tricky too in the world of self-help with a lot of people, the visualization, the manifestation things,
Right.
you got to have a really clear picture of what is it that you want, right? That's what we're coached a lot of the times. And that's what many people say, this is what I want. It's very clear. And so there's an attachment to the thing. There's an attachment to the end game. Most people will have that. The nuance is figuring out, okay, well, what happens when you get that? And or what happens when you don't? What does it all mean? And then what are you hoping for when you get there? Like, what is it that what is the root desire of that thing? And for somebody to say, to constantly ask yourself, well, why that, why that, why that, why that? And then also, what if you don't get it? What does it mean? For a lot of people, it means, well, I'm a failure. I suck. I'm not good enough. I got to keep trying, Well, maybe that wasn't really the thing you needed to go for, right? Maybe it wasn't aligned with you or for you. And so if there's a reason behind the thing you're going for, and then also if about when I get that, then I'll feel loved or enough or whatever it is. And then what happens is you're not aware of the fact that that thing can't fill that hole inside of you.
Exactly. Right.
And it never will. Then you get that quick hit, and then you have to try, and then you're going for it all over again because you need that hit of adrenaline, you need that hit of accomplishment, and that becomes the addiction part of it, right? Whereas if you are more committed to the experience and the journey along the way and really embracing, like me going into entrepreneurship and going into coaching and doing the work that I'm doing now, right? I really had to get clear on why, and then very quickly start to recognize that I'm going to fall in love with and really enjoy the journey that I'm on, because you and I both probably have an experience of like, oh, when I get that first client, and then you get that client, and then it's like, oh, well, then I need this many, it's like, and then it just keeps going. And then you have an offer and somebody says yes to it. Well, then I need a new, it's like, it just keeps going. And if it's about that, it's like, it's that feeling of never enough, where if it's like, oh, this is fun, who am I? And somebody that one of my mentors would often ask me, early in this process, she goes, how's your boss treating you? Which was me, right? And I always really liked that question because it really brought the focus back to me and how am I showing up every day? And it really
yourself.
made, yeah. Like, what's the inner dialogue like? What time am I getting up in the morning? What is my routine like? What is my process like? What's my creativity like? How am I being with others? How am I collaborating? What lights me up about what I do? What doesn't really light me up about what I do? And laughing at myself when, I'm doing something that's just kind of, I don't know, funny or weird or whatever, and just saying, oh, look how I showed up for that, and really experiencing the journey part of it and having fun in that. That's the process versus, well, if I don't land that thing, or if I don't hit that imaginary milestone I made up for myself, for what reason, I don't know, who made the rules, and then if I don't hit that, then what will that mean about me? Because if me staying this course was all about hitting the imaginary milestones I've set for myself and my self-worth, I would have had to quit a long time ago,
Right.
Because it keeps moving.
It does. Well, I mean, we keep moving the goalpost, right? Because
it's
this, and as you're talking, it's also sort of sparking for me that it's very similar in the process of dating and relationship too, where It's that next milestone, like, oh, we had a good date. Are they my partner? Are they going to be my partner? We're now, a couple. Are we going to marry? Are we going to get married? Are we going to have kids? It's like this constant pulling for whatever the next goalpost that we see as the one we should go for, as opposed to letting a relationship and a business, flourish at its own pace to its own right size, where we are actually paced with it and enjoying it and opening to it. Right?
Yeah.
The parallels feel very similar.
Yeah.
Letting it breathe and not being so goal oriented or clinging to a certain outcome, that's the only outcome that's correct, kind of thing. Because I have a friend, every time I post some kind of post on social media about, like, this is my desire and I claim this and I want to do that, and her comment is always the same. She's like, remember, we plan, but God laughs. She just, and I like, invariably, I've come to expect it. It makes me laugh because it's like, oh yeah, right. That's right. Like, I can have desire and life is going to do what it does. And how do I be okay with that, and enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's and this has worked for me too. I'm certainly it's like everyday work for me, in staying conscious of that, in just really being present for the journey and recognizing that my self-worth is not attached to the next milestone, that again are made up, right? That society and our culture, and you travel all over, so you probably know and recognize quite frequently the differences among cultures and things like that, and how things that we may value here are not the same as everywhere, right? So there's not some like law of being human that we all need to follow. And what you were talking about reminded me, there's so many friends that I have, that go to, we went to college and then grad school, and then you get married, and then, you get the house, and then you have the 2.5 kids, and then you get the summer home, and then you do all the things. And then it's like, do. And I never followed that path. I would like to say that it was intentional, but it wasn't. I think I was just dealt a different hand. But people my age and my friends, they look at me and they go, oh, well, you've always been so different, you've always marched to your own drummer and stuff like that. But maybe that's the case, but it's also because they've all followed that blueprint. And then what ends up happening, like you were saying too, in some cases, the couple is so focused on the next thing that they're not focused on cultivating the relationship, that one day they look at each other and they go, oh, I don't know if I like you actually anymore.
Exactly. Totally.
They've grown apart, right?
Yeah.
Because
that
they're
happens
committed
a
to
lot.
careers, they're each developing on their own in their careers and friends and interests and stuff like that. But they bond over the milestone and the achievement. Yeah. So they look good on the outside, right? Like, oh, we're following the thing. We're supposed to be doing this thing. And then all of a sudden they're midlife and they don't connect anymore.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So how do we get set up? So part of it is a cultural thing. So one of the things we've highlighted so far is we live in a culture that's very driven by accolades, success, goals, achievement. What do you feel sets us up beyond culture, like aside from culture, to be that way? Like, what happens when because I know I have my ideas about it when I was little, like what made me into a perfectionist, and I'm and somebody who's very driven, and I'm curious how you see that process, like a kid becoming molded that way. How does that happen?
Yeah, I was just talking with a client of mine earlier today, actually, and we were sort of laughing about, it's kind of tragic, but also laughing about, and it could also be generational, but, the impact of television and media and what we were shown as the ideal family, for example, the ideal careers. I know for me, it was a really big deal if you were a doctor and attorney. I'm sure now it's much different in the world of tech, and or engineering and things like that. It's like the certain careers, the certain house, the certain neighborhood. There's just being inundated with messaging all the time that this is what's normal, right? This is what we do. And then, of course, in earlier generations, with newspapers and things, you see all the housewife, the 50s era housewife, and the husband going out to work and probably doing sales or something like that, and traveling, and the typical woman keeping everything tidy, and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it shifts with generations, but I think the impact of the messaging from media, and then our typical, parents want their kids to do better, right, than maybe they did, or something like that. And there's this idea of good and bad, and wanting the kid to be good and getting it right. And that, for me, I mean, the perfectionism came because I learned very quickly that I wouldn't get in trouble if I was perfect, right? It was a very highly disciplined household. And so there was just a lot of fear in me that if I didn't get it right, I would be in trouble, right? So that was messaging that I had really early on as well. And I was taking messaging from media, okay, that's good, that's not. And then with my parents, okay, I don't get in trouble if I do this, I do get in trouble if I do that. So, and then academics was where I really excelled, right? So you get the pat on the back for being perfect in school, and not getting out of order, and you just start shrinking more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and then you just become more committed to the blueprint that's being given to you, and just following the blueprint. And I think that's, for me, how it started. And I often felt if I didn't follow the blueprint, I would get in trouble. And I still have that sometimes, every now and then. If I screw up, one of the first things I think is, I'm going to get in trouble. And here I am, a grown woman, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like, who's
No,
going
but
to
it's
yell
so
at you?
fascinating how that's encoded so deeply inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it, as far as how it starts. And then the undoing of that is like, okay, what is it that I really want? And then it's going internal and really sitting and being still with ourselves and asking, well, why, what would that bring me? Why do I want that? Right. And just keep asking why, like, oh, I want this house over here. Okay. Why? Well, I want to live on the beach. Okay, great. What would the beach provide for you? I just think living on a beach is cool. Okay, well, why? And it's a friendly inquiry, it's not one of judgment. But often, as people keep asking the question why, if they're not aware enough yet, they'll often end up in a place of, well, it has something to do with status, right? It has something to do with feeling like you made it, which then will eventually lead back to feeling loved. Because we're all conditioned that a certain level of status, appearance, whatever, means we're more lovable.
And that feels
right?
like at the root of so much of that intense push. And as you're speaking, it's also the word safe popped into my mind. So it's like,
yes.
Especially I think as children, in your case, like you said, I wouldn't get in trouble. So achievement became equated with, this is how I stay safe, which to a kid is essential. Because if you're not taken care of by your family, like you starve and you die. It's to a kid, it's a real fear, right? So and then it's just carried in the nervous system till adulthood. So I think there's some safety piece to it too, that, if I have this much money, or if I have this much status, or if I have, I'll be safe. And it's, again, safety is a moving target. If it's not inside, if you don't have safety inside, it's going to be rough for you.
Hmm.
So would you say a word to that as well?
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I 1000% agree with that. And I was having a similar conversation not long ago on that too. And I think one thing even COVID taught us was even money can't keep you safe, in the sense of, a lot of well-employed, well-earning people lost a lot of things during COVID, right? And or
It was
other
a big wake up
situations.
call. It was
That
a
was
big
just
wake up call.
a dramatic sweep for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it says, okay, well, even if you have, if even if you land, that job, that dream job you've always wanted, awesome. And there's a level of impermanence to that, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with the idea of safety, and that is something that I continuously work on in my own
Same.
personal development, is
Yeah.
cultivating that sense of safety. And I think one thing that helps me, and it's worked for some folks that I work with too, is walking myself out to the worst case scenario and then
Mm.
reverse engineering, right? Like then walking backwards from it. Okay, let's just imagine my biggest fear. What would I do in that situation? Okay, well, I would do this, 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 and this. These are some options, the options A, B, C, you know, and when I can walk myself through that, then it gives me a little bit more courage to step into the unknown. And I say this for people who want to get off the blueprint, who
Yeah.
want to step out of the
Yeah, I
matrix,
mean,
right?
if you
And do
if
their
you're
own
happy
thing.
with the blueprint, great.
Right.
Like more
Yeah.
power to you, but like I've never been one for it. So
Yeah.
like I'm speaking to my fellow freaks out here, who never
Exactly.
fit
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're sitting at the other table in high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, it's yeah, and so it's scary because there, and then you end up finding your fellow, weirdos out there that can kind of,
Yay.
yeah, be with you on the journey. But yeah, I do that anytime now when I take a big risk. For me, what I consider a big risk, I walk myself through it. Okay, what's your worst fear? And then even in the world of relationships, I was
Mm.
working with a client who was really struggling in their marriage at one point, and there was the fear of divorce and all of that, and they repaired it. They were on the other side of it, but there was still the fear of divorce in the back of this person's mind, and very fearful of, if they misstepped, that it could lead to divorce again. And so we walked through it. Okay, what would happen if you actually did get the divorce? What would that look like? And it was this really vulnerable conversation, and through that they were able to see, like, okay, yeah, it would suck, it's not what I want, and I can get through it and I'll survive, right? And so when they were able to sort of relax into it and recognize that they were acting in ways that weren't working for them, weren't working for their partner, because it was all based on fear,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
I think that's a helpful exercise for some of us that want to step out into the unknown, but have that fear of, wanting to be safe,
Well, and it's such a beautiful way to make ourselves safe, because if we already acknowledge, hey, there's a chance, because what's coming to mind is I love how
Yeah.
counter kind of the positive thinking, thing that is. It's like, no, imagine the worst case scenario. What would you do there so that you're
Yeah.
prepared if it happens, versus some pie in the sky, like everything is, going to turn out happy all the time. And then you get blindsided when it doesn't. And so I love the what's the word, the reversal there, in a sense of finding safety. Like you can actually settle your system through walking yourself back from what the worst thing, okay, this is what I would do, etc. It kind of like, to me, it speaks to that sort of little anxious part of the mind that's always worrying about the thing anyway. So it's like, okay, let me throw you a bone. Let's figure it out so you can sit down and let me get on with my business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think talking it out with somebody who you feel safe with also is really helpful, because, again, I was talking to somebody I'm in the process, we're just looking at real estate to buy a house, not to invest, to literally just be in a home and call it our own. And, it's the Wild West out there. It's horrible. But, anyone you talk to about real estate right now, or just wanting to buy a house, you get inundated with their story, their projection, right? You talk to 10 different people, you get 10 different opinions on the market right now, right? And so everyone's coming at you with their thoughts and their opinions. And not everyone is the best person to talk to about a vulnerable decision, right? Like buying or a sensitive and emotional decision. So, buying a home to me, it's an emotional, there's a lot of emotion involved.
Yes.
So not everyone is the safest person to walk through that with, because they're not aware that they're, vomiting their thoughts on real estate. And the last time they bought a home was, 1970 or something like that,
Yeah.
And they bought it for like 20 grand, in the hillside or something. So it's like walking it through with somebody that is skilled in holding the space for you and being in the process with you, so you don't get their fears intermixed with your fears. I think many people, and I had to learn that too, not everyone is designed to have the same conversation with you. And that plays a large part in safety too, right?
Yeah.
So
and
practicing
I think that's
discretion.
that's another way that we also need to learn to advocate for ourselves, is to know who's safe to take what to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, sometimes I think we're not always super discerning about it. And then we open up to that person who's not equipped. And then the end feeling, it can turn inward, right? It can be like, oh, make it mean something wrong about me, versus, oh, that person just wasn't equipped to hold me here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I'm wrong or something's wrong with me because I'm talking about this thing or have these fears or whatever it is that I want to brainstorm with somebody about. It's that I just chose not the best person,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that's a really key, whether it's a trained professional like you and me, or a trusted friend. There's certain friends too, like, oh, I can bring this to this one, but not to that one, because I know their history, right? And like that, right? And so I think that part is also key, where knowing what to bring to whom has us also feel safer.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone is becoming aware that they've been on this treadmill, this nonstop, achievement cycle, and they're ready to start coming more into the present and appreciating life. Maybe you have a prettier way to say that, but that's just what comes to mind right now. They're ready to get off the hamster wheel. Like, where's a good spot to start?
Yeah, well, I think a good spot, well, if they're already in the space of recognizing that they are on this hamster wheel and they feel stuck, they feel trapped, I think the first place to start is to reach out and to get some help. Talk to somebody who can guide them through it. And there's a lot of people out there who are going through life without what's called, a feedback loop, like a positive feedback loop. And not in the sense of positive meaning, hey, you're great all the time, but somebody who's actually able to give you healthy feedback, right? And I know for me, if I didn't have the community of people that support me consistently giving me healthy feedback, I wouldn't recognize, like, if my behaviors are starting to, go off course, or I'm doing something funky, or all of a sudden I'm doing something impulsive that doesn't really align with my values or who I say I want to be. So it's really important to have somebody just be a mirror for you and hold space for you in that way, like we just talked about, a safe space. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to last forever, but if you want to get through that transition period, bringing somebody in that can hold space, provide feedback, really give you some safe inquiry on who you say you want to be and whether that matches what you're actually doing. Because many of us feel one way on the inside, but show up very differently on the outside,
I do, indeed.
Yeah.
So I understand. So there's a free gift down below. I want listeners, Brandi's brilliant, and go find her stuff and sign up for, like, follow her on Instagram, check out her website, check out her gift and sign up for that. And because it's just so good to have a voice of sanity in this coaching world that's like rah, rah, more, more. To have a voice of sanity that's like, really? More? Really? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
But why?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
funny because I live like looking at the ocean on a beach. And so you're doing those questions. I was like, yeah, why? And for me, it has a lot to do with my mental state is benefited by being able to look out over a horizon. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, one of my spiritual teachers told me that when I was 22. She was like, you need to look at an ocean because you have a very busy head. And
That's awesome.
here I am
Yeah.
in my 50s.
Yeah.
I'm finally getting to look at the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, so for me, it's very much about that. But I found myself reflecting because it is such a useful process to think about, these attainments that we might be going for. Is that really mine? Is that something
Mhm.
I absorbed? Is that something I was trained to want? But actually, if I get down into it, it's not really my desire, And that work is so key for each of us to do. And so I'm grateful that you're out here asking the good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you
Do you have any
too.
final? Thank you. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share to bring us home?
Yeah, no, and just for anyone that's listening or watching, I just want to say thank you and acknowledge you for being here and having these courageous conversations and doing the work and the self-inquiry. And even if you're just dipping your toe in, it's so admirable. There's so many people out there that are going through life without taking a look at themselves and really doing that kind of inner work. So just for being here, you're already part of the small percentage of people that are doing the work and trying to make the world a better place. Because I know as we all continue to heal our wounds, the world becomes more healed as well. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm really grateful for anyone to be here, and keep doing the good work. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So that's a wrap for today. And remember, until we meet next time, that a great relationship starts with you, and especially your relationship with yourself. Thank you so much, Brandi. And I look forward to the next time we get to have a conversation.